In a small town, there was a boy named Eli. He was always eager to grow up quickly, to be stronger, wiser, as if life had to happen immediately to feel right. He hated waiting for his mother's unfinished meal, for the sun to finally rise in the morning. In Eli's eyes, waiting was a waste of time. But what he didn't know yet was that some things only bloom when one is patient enough, and when the heart is still enough to wait. Eli's grandfather was a quiet man. He had lived long enough to understand that the most precious things often arrive slowly and are often missed by those who rush. He watched his grandson's impatience with an expression that was part tenderness, part understanding.
One afternoon, while the sunlight lingered gently on the worn wooden porch, he called Eli over. Without saying much, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of tiny seeds. "Plant these by the well," he said slowly, "and water them every day. But remember, if you forget, something unfortunate might happen." Eli's eyes widened. "You mean bad luck?" His grandfather only smiled, without answering. That smile wasn't threatening. It felt more like he was holding a secret, something Eli would have to discover on his own, not through words, but through the quiet waiting that lay ahead. From that day on, every morning, Eli would carry a small watering can and quietly walk to the well, gently pouring water onto the patch of soil where he had planted the seeds. At first, he was excited, but day after day the ground remained bare, unchanged. Doubt began to creep in. Maybe the seeds were bad. Or was his grandfather just testing him? More than once, Eli was tempted to dig them up and check. But every time he almost did, he'd remember the gentle look in his grandfather's eyes, and he would stop. So he continued, not out of fear of bad luck anymore, but because of something deeper, as if he was slowly learning how to believe in things not yet seen. Then one morning, as Eli stepped out like he always did, something made him pause. On the same dry patch of earth, a tiny green sprout had emerged, delicate like a whispered promise. He held his breath, knelt down, and gazed at that little thing, as if it were the first miracle he had ever witnessed. There was no fanfare, no grand moment, just a quiet green life pushing itself up through the silence. From that moment on, Eli no longer watered the soil out of obligation or fear. He did it because he wanted to, because he felt that a part of him was growing alongside that little plant, slowly, silently, but beautifully. As time passed, that once tiny sprout grew into a lush green bush. Its leaves stretched out like little hands waving to the wind. And then, one morning, Eli stood still as the first flowers began to bloom. They weren't as dazzling as in the movies, but they held a quiet beauty, pure, simple, and full of life. He sat there for a long while beside the flowers, saying nothing. For the first time, Eli no longer felt that time was an enemy. His grandfather came and sat beside him, eyes still as gentle as the day he handed him the seeds. "You see it now, don't you, Eli?" he said slowly. "Not all precious things come right away. Just as the plant needed time to grow, so do you. Everything has its season." Eli nodded. Inside him, there was no more restlessness, no more doubt, only a quiet peace, like a flower blooming softly in the garden of his mind. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, so each passing day brings you a little more motivation, a little more peace, and a little more growth. Thank you so much.